what are we going to do to heal our guts? It's really something that's being talked about quite often. I'm going to give you a little background. I know some of you know who I am. Some of you have visited with me before. Some of you are friends with me on Facebook. But I do want to give you a little bit of background just very briefly here. And the reason I want to do that is because I want everyone to understand that this has been a lifestyle of mine for a very long time. It actually began almost 35, 37 years ago, something like that. I started with a restaurant. I opened a vegan restaurant, one of my first entrepreneurial ventures. And from there, I progressed into becoming a chiropractor. And from being a chiropractor, I studied with the Loomis Institute for Digestive Health. And then from there, I actually ended up in Europe working with the Ministries of Health to get authorization for some very wonderful foods, herbs and herbal extracts that were coming from the Amazon rainforest. So I just wanted to share that briefly with everyone so you know this has been a long journey, a beautiful journey, and I want to share some of it with you tonight. And I'm really excited to share this and this quantum model tonight about how to care for your gut. I'm going to give you a simple guide, absolutely. But I'm going to do more than that, hopefully, during this process. I'm going to actually talk about, well, what happened? How did we get into this predicament? And frankly, all of us on this call know that we can care for ourselves. We can empower ourselves to optimize our wellness. We know that the best healthcare system is one in which we're making our own choices. We know that our body is blessed with an inborn intelligence. It animates us, it heals us, and it keeps us healthy at all times. We know that the body, that the power that made this body is the power that heals this body. But what happened? What happened along the way? Okay, and that's what we're going to get into. We're going to get into the microscopic level and the macroscopic, the big picture and the small picture of what happened and how we can heal our gut. That's what we're going to do tonight. So you're probably wondering, well, what do cigarettes have to do with it? Well, absolutely nothing other than, frankly, the predicament that we're in is that there is a lot of misleading advertising that's convinced most of us that we need to eat a certain way for convenience and be quick about it. Well, the tobacco industry, so I'm going to make an argument here. It's just my perspective, but the tobacco industry did the very same thing. They created these very cool images of, the camel character of the year, right? With this cool camel in his tuxedo smoking a cigarette. They had other advertisements with your dentist and your doctor saying, I would recommend Viceroys. They had ways of advertising that suggested that they would reduce carcinogens. What a deal, right? Less carcinogens, who wants any at all? They even, in the most contemporary, bringing it up to today, they're talking about the vapes, and we can smoke a refined tobacco through these vaporizers that don't lend themselves to providing toxins to our body. Well, the fact of the matter is they do. So all this deceptive advertising, right? 7,000 chemicals in tobacco, 70 carcinogens, all this deceptive advertising got us to believing, well, we'll do it. We'll smoke anyway. It's cool. Well, here's my contention, that big food is now doing the very same thing. Examples are things like enriched flour, fortified with vitamin D, fortified with folic acid. And we're going to talk more about some of those things in just a second. So my contention is that we got here not by accident, but because there was intention to deceive rather than speak truth to the American public. Okay, having said that, let's talk about, well, I have a gut instinct that our gut is actually quite intelligent, that we actually can heal ourselves no matter what may be coming at us. So I'm going to talk about the gut and design of the gut and the important aspects just very briefly. Imagine that your gut, small intestine, large intestine, bowel, etc., the surface area of 2 tennis courts where 80% of your immune system lives. Often the gut is referred to as the second brain. And there's a really interesting perspective on that. And it's based on physiology. There is something called the enteric nervous system. There is the enteric nerve, and I'm not going to get too scientific here, but just track with me. The enteric nerve feeds into a much larger pathway, nerve pathway, called the vagus nerve. Goes straight up into the brainstem, on into the brain. There are hundreds, literally 100 million cells, neurotransmitters, all along your gastrointestinal tract. From your esophagus down to your rectum, there are huge amounts of information being communicated to your brain. And in your brain, you have neuroreceptors. These are things that receive information, little brain cells that receive information, or I should say aspects of the brain cell that takes in information. You've all heard about the opioid epidemic. Well, we're susceptible and quite vulnerable to things that begin to, well, we swallow those things, they end up in our gut. And then the gut will take and communicate what it needs to with the brain. In some instances, it protects us. In some other instances, it actually creates a very toxic environment, not only for our brain, but our entire body. You'll notice that little picture of a normal gut. Those are individual cells of your membrane, cells of the lining of your gut. And those cells have a space between them, also known as a junction. Those should be tight, very tight. And we're going to talk about what brings them apart. But just so everyone understands, those junctions should be very tight. Not allowing things to be absorbed, xenotoxins or foreign toxins, any toxins of any sort that end up in our gut, this is actually a protective mechanism. Remember, we have gut intelligence, okay? What else is down in there? Lots of bacteria to process our food. Bacteria creates metabolites. It increases that cell-to-cell communication. It protects the gut membrane. We're going to talk about that bacteria in just a moment. So a healthy gut versus an unhealthy gut. Well, a healthy gut, you see it right there. Those junctions are very tight. Lots of beneficial bacteria in relationship or in ratio to or detrimental bacteria. The unhealthy versus the healthy bacteria, you can see are in a good ratio. Usually it should be in the 80-20 range. And by the way, you can never do too much to heal your gut. We'll get into that as well. So gut permeability is when those junctions I was just talking about come apart. There's a gap. And now these xenotoxins, these toxins, start to float through or move through and into our bloodstream, and then we're headed for some serious, in some instances, some very serious illness. Autoimmune, we're talking about things like cancer, diabetes, we're talking about heart disease. So a healthy gut versus an unhealthy gut. Okay. Now, where do all of these intestinal problems originate? Like, how did we get here, okay? Besides the fact that we swallowed this load of nonsense from the marketing geniuses out there that suggest we eat certain things that are probably relatively unhealthy, like, for example, processed foods, like, for example, sugar. I call sugar rat poison. It literally is a poison to the human body. Now, foods we eat, medicines we ingest, and toxins we breathe, okay? Contaminants coming from our environment, coming from outside of us. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit about something that doesn't get talked of too very much at all. And I will try not to get too scientific for the sake of time restriction, but I want everyone to understand that you have a brilliant mechanism working on your behalf at all times, and it's based in genetics, and it's based in the ability for your body to detox itself. Now, the fancy science word is called methylation. And what that is, in simple language, is the ability for your body to actually detox itself. But studies now indicate that we've become so overwhelmed by contaminants, by toxins, that there has become a mutation. In fact, 60%, some studies suggest that as many as 60% of us now have a mutation in this detoxification, innate, inborn detoxification mechanism called methylation. Now, let's talk a little bit about methylation, not too deep, like I said, but remember, there's an old saying, it goes, genes load the gun, environment pulls the trigger. So we've got a lot to do with how we stay healthy. And these genes do not predispose us to becoming sick, to earning a cancer, to developing heart disease, to developing diabetes. Some would suggest that we're predisposed to those kinds of diseases because of our genetic makeup. Well, we also have genes working for us on our favor. Now, methylation, real simple. A methyl is a molecule. It will attach to B vitamins, particularly B9 and B12. Now, most of us know that B vitamins are really, really important, okay, particularly B12, and B9, being folic acid, also very important to this process of detoxification. So when we have enough B12 and B9 specifically, I'm talking about, that methyl molecule that's involved with this methylation process attaches. It creates what's called methylcobalamin with the B12 and the methyl form of folic acid, folate, I should say, not folic acid. Folate is the natural form. Folic acid is the synthetic form that you'll see in basically very poor supplementation. And there's a lot of supplementation. In fact, I was walking through the supermarket today looking at so much of the supplementation having been fortified with folic acid. Frankly, you don't want to be taking folic acid into your body. It can actually prevent the absorption of folate, the B9 that we need to help us detox. So what about this mutation that makes it difficult for our bodies to detox? Well, what if I got that mutation going? What does that ultimately do? Well, here's the big picture. We either have the ability to detox efficiently, or some of us less efficiently because a mutation has actually occurred to that MTHFR gene. I know this is getting a little scientific here, but just track with me because you're going to see at the end of this that the solution is as simple as you already know. I just wanted everyone to understand that detoxification inside of our bodies is a natural mechanism. Does that make sense? I hope that give me a yes for those that are on the chat there. Give me a yes if that starts to make sense, that it would make sense that we have our own natural mechanism in place, but in some instances, detoxification support, okay, would be helpful. Or in the case of where we're focused here on this webinar, maybe we simply want to support our gut and learn a simple process for forever creating a healthy gut. That's the idea. We already know there's hundreds of thousands of chemicals in our foods or drugs, personal products, everyday items, like yada, yada. We know that already. Our job is to figure out how we can care for ourselves efficiently, understanding that we have these mechanisms in place that we can actually support and do better with. Okay, I hope that's helpful. I know I stayed on that a long time, but that leads me to this next slide. How did our guts get into the predicament that they're in right now and so many of us are suffering with? You've heard it all, everything from radical forms of leaky gut, to, well, people completely messing with their intestinal system because they can't digest anything. But what they don't know are the rather simplistic few items that we need to create a healthy gut. But there's one thing that has been playing havoc with this natural detoxification mechanism and with our gut, and that's called glyphosate. And I had to bring up this herbicide. It's the toxic chemical in Roundup for those of you who don't know. For those of you who do know, it's an endocrine disruptor. It creates a tremendous amount of oxidative stress. That means huge amounts of free radicals. That means huge amount of toxins floating around in our intestinal system, our gut, and it literally alters our metabolism. It completely disrupts the microbiome. The microbiome, for those of you who don't know, is the terrain. That's those tennis courts that I was talking about. 7 of them is the size of your intestine. That microbiome, that terrain is disrupted in huge ways by glyphosate. And what it ultimately does is cause a decrease in that ratio I was talking about of beneficial to harmful bacteria. Okay? So I want to let everyone know about something that I'm doing that I might suggest everyone do for themselves. And it's up to you. It'll probably be the best $99 you've ever spent. And that's actually get yourself a lab test. It's called the GPL tox test. You can see it right there. And you can either go to a clinician or you can contact them directly, the Great Plains Laboratory, as you see on the slide. Go to greatplainslaboratory.com. You might want to write that down. Get yourself a glyphosate test because you might want to take a look inside and see how much exposure you've had to this particular toxin. Now, there are other tests you can take, but we're just going to focus here. You can actually determine how much of a mutation has occurred to that methylation process. That's a different test, and this laboratory will actually allow you to do that. I'm not here promoting the laboratory because I'm not into it for anything. I just want to help everyone get a bead on how you can help yourselves. You can actually get a test that will tell you. There's an amazing amount of genetic testing we can do right now. I'm not going to get into all that detail, but you can do a lot of genetic testing to see where you want to focus in your health, very specifically. So if, for example, you know that you have a mutation in your methylation or in that natural detox process we were talking about earlier, if you want to find out whether you've been exposed to, some extreme amount of this glyphosate, and by the way, right now, studies indicate that probably 90 to 95% of the population has some amount of glyphosate because we're all living in neighborhoods and Roundup is sprayed routinely in our neighborhoods on the grass. It's a weed killer, basically. Okay, for those of you who don't know. All right. So, and glyphosate, by the way, got its, abhorrent name and popularity because of GMO crops, genetically modified organisms, because those crops were modified to be able to outgrow the weeds that were around them. And this was the herbicide, or I should say be tolerant, more specifically, be tolerant of this particular herbicide. In fact, this herbicide is even used as a desiccant on the wheat crop, and it's used all around soy and corn crops. So it's not just getting into what we eat, it's also getting into the water, and it's an aerosol. Okay? If you go to, I think it's Moms Across America, and my friend Zen Honeycutt, there was a study conducted across 5,000 schools in rural America, and what they found was the children had 85% more of what would be tolerated in a human blood system. They had this herbicide in there. So it's worthy, very possibly, to spend that money and take a look, okay? All right, I just wanted to get that to you. Let's get back to the gut, because now we're diving deeper. We're starting to move into that terrain. We want to know what are the kinds of bacteria that actually can create a healthy microbiome. And that would be, and most of you have heard of probiotics. Many of you have heard of prebiotics, but let me define them. So probiotics simply are friendly bacteria. And you know, lactobacillus, acidophilus, kefir, yogurt, there are foods, finished products that have beneficial bacteria or friendly bacteria. I would, rather than go for those products necessarily, I would look for an excellent probiotic that has a variety of probiotics in it, and use that. And we're going to talk about how important that is. Well, we are talking about how important the probiotics are to beginning to get that gut right, the balance between unhealthy and healthy. Now, prebiotics feed the friendly bacteria. So prebiotics are fermented foods. They're your best source. There's other sources for prebiotics, but fermented foods are an excellent source. Kimchi, sauerkraut, what's the fermented drink? I'm missing it in my brain right now. But you know what I'm talking about, the drink, the fermented drink that everyone drinks. God, it's slipping my brain right now. But what I want to get to is there's also something called plus biotics. And plus biotics actually are targeted at supporting the rebuilding of the intestinal mucosa. Plus biotics are very, very specific ingredients. So a specialized probiotic. Okay? So there really are probiotics, prebiotics, and plus biotics. It doesn't get too complicated, because the truth is you can get a lot of probiotics and prebiotics going just in a good salad. You can, it gets a little more, you have to be a little more careful when you're putting your plus biotics, meaning it's specific. So you would want I call it a supplement that actually is formulated in a way, and we're going to talk about that supports in that intestinal integrity, the rebuilding of that intestinal mucosa, the tightening of those junctions I talked about. That's what I'm getting at. Those junctions need to be tight. Okay, let's move on. So how do you evaluate if you have a healthy gut? Well, all of us have experienced this at some point or another, or know people that are, whether it's bloating, whether it's cravings, whether it's a resistance to weight loss, whether it's lack of sleep, fluid retention, depression, constipation. All of these things are things that if that's beginning to happen for you, it's probably a good time to check in and say, maybe there's something I need to do about that. Dr. Zach Busch, who's a triple board certified doctor of internal medicine and endocrinology, you can see all the things he's listed as the health problems associated with growing older are all traced to gut health. So dementia, arthritis, again, inability to sleep, loss of energy, fatigue, anxiety, depression, obesity. And you can go deeper, much deeper on any one of these topics, but let's move forward. So the 4-step plan. This is how simple it gets. This is your basic guide to healing your gut. And yes, we can go deeper, but if you get this much, you're more than 100% there. Remove foods that are damaging the gut. Eliminate them. We mentioned some of them earlier. Processed foods, sugar, fats, unhealthy fats, excess of unhealthy salts. There's a lot of foods that make our body work much harder, and actually than they need to, but also cause damage to the gut. All we have to do is remove those. It's fairly simple. And then the second step in the 4-step plan is just replace with healing foods. More vegetables. Keep it green. Keep it lean. And add superfoods. Superfoods, which I have a slide later that actually defines what a superfood is. It's simply a 0-calorie, high-density nutrition. And those superfoods come in a variety from, you guys could probably name 1,000 of them, but there are a lot of superfoods in the market that will absolutely complement a healthy diet. Superfoods like spirulina, like wheatgrass, like chlorella, on and on. There's a ton of them. The third step is repair with those specialized ingredients that I was talking about. That's the supplementary nutrition. The best example is it's a product that I just became aware of called Biome Medic. And the reason that is such an interesting product, it's because it contains those specialized ingredients. In fact, it contains a fraction of wheat germ. I'll talk about that just quickly. It contains a very specific probiotic. I'm just, now I've forgotten, there's a third ingredient in the Biome Medic. But the focus of Biome Medic ultimately is to do three things. Now I just remembered the third ingredient is humic and fulvic acid. Now why these very specialized ingredients for healing the gut? Fulvic and humic acid has the ability to chelate out the herbicide and other xenotoxins that have entered your gut. The beautiful thing about the fraction of wheat germ is that it's able to heal the microvilli. Those are those little hairs that kind of wash the food and help with peristalsis, wash the food through your gut, also prevent the absorption of unhealthy toxins. So there are three things that have to happen to restore that microbiome. One, we have to chelate out those toxins. The humic and fulvic acid has a specific talent for doing that. The specific probiotic that's used in this particular formulation removes those toxins. First, they have to be bound together, then they have to be removed. And simultaneously, those microvilli, those hairs that you saw in the illustration that I put up earlier, they have to be healed. I always like to describe it as our gut is like this field of grass. And when that field of grass has a gentle wind blowing through it without any fires burning holes there, then we're healthy. And that's a healthy microbiome. So we need to restore the integrity of those microvilli. We need to tighten the junctions of those mucosal cells. Remember the membrane, those junctions between those cells. We need to remove the xenotoxins. That's any foreign toxin that's made its way into your gut, and ultimately remove them, and ultimately then rebalance. That's step number 4 here on the 4-step plan. Rebalance or re-inoculate with probiotics, prebiotics, and the plus biotics we were just talking about. And ultimately feed your body food that will absolutely help you to restore and regain the integrity of that microbiome of that gut. Remove foods, replace with healing foods, repair with those specialized ingredients, then rebalance and re-inoculate. Okay, let's just go to the next slide. And that next slide tells us, it's just like in the plant kingdom. I put this up just kind of a review. It's simple, and it reveals what happens in the plant kingdom. If a plant's unhealthy and it's not getting the nutrients it needs, it's prone to disease, and that's exactly the human condition. So that's a simple illustration of that. We need to change our way of looking at what would be the best medicine cabinet for us, right? Would it be one filled with toxic substances, or will it be one in which we have far more green food? In fact, for those of you who don't know the Latin derivative of the word folate, which is actually, again, B9, it's coming from green foods, folate for foliage. So we need to pay attention to diet. We need to pay attention to our digestion. We certainly need to pay attention to our elimination. And as I said earlier, get rid of the junk food, get rid of the sugar. All of that produces a tremendous amount of inflammation, swelling and pain, and all those discomforts that need not be there. All of this is preventable. And Wigmore, who cured herself of cancer with green foods, in fact said the food you eat can either be your safest and most powerful form of medicine or the slowest form of poison. I know many of you on the line are coaches. You've heard that before. She was one of the most empowered women of our last century. If you don't know who she is, I would suggest you look her up on the internet. She was brilliant. She lived, I think, to be 93 years old and cured herself of cancer using green foods. Okay, so the power of green foods. Why am I emphasizing green foods? Because of the vitamins that are in the green, the micronutrients, the iron and zinc, all of the antioxidants. Remember, we're under probably the largest amount of contamination stress ever. It's unprecedented. And it's increasing. But we have a brilliant body. If we feed it the right things, our body is going to work in our favor. Even if there's a mutation in that methylation we were talking about, that natural ability for our bodies to detox, we can give our bodies detoxification support. We can create a healthy microbiome. We can create a healthy gut. It's not hard to do it. We just need to feed things to our body that provide, let's call it the substance, the foundation for health. Okay, so enough about that. This is, I'm going to scoot through these because these are just different, articles that were written on what happens when we do restore our gut, or if it goes out of balance, what happens. And there's just a ton. The reason I have these up is because I'm actually giving a talk here in just a few days, and I wanted to just identify some research for some of the people in the audience. But, gut health news is everywhere right now. It's what everybody's talking about. The coaches are... all health coaches need to be talking about the gut. The gut is actually the first layer of systems in the human body. The endocrine system, the endocrine is the deepest layer, or what's called the seventh layer. So starting with the gut is where all health begins in your gut. All health begins in your gut. And we are either predisposed to those chronic illnesses because we've not taken care of ourselves. We've become overwhelmed. Our natural detoxification system has become overwhelmed, and we've not given ourselves additional support like we're talking about, by removing the foods, by adding healing foods, by doing things. You can't ever do enough to heal your gut. In fact, almost every day, I certainly remember it most times, I put probiotics into my body. Okay. Having said that, we know why to alkalize. Obviously, if you have an alkaline bloodstream, which is usually between 7.4 to 7.8 in pH, you're going to absorb macro and micronutrients much more efficiently. Okay. Now, this is the definition of nutrigenomics. Now, what did we say earlier? Genes have a part to play in our ability to detox and in our ability to have a healthy gut and our ability to restore health and prevent disease. And we understand now that, of course, we have an innate ability to heal, an inborn intelligence. All we need to do is give it the right nutrition. So nutrigenomics, it holds great promise, as you see, in not only fighting obesity and cancer, but frankly, we're beginning to understand that we can flip on or flip off, that is to say, turn off or turn on genes that can either make us very sick or actually optimize every day for us and our wellness. That methylation process that I talked about earlier in the webinar, without a healthy amount of detox, one of the markers that's used is an amino acid called homocysteine. Some of you probably heard of it. With a great deal of homocysteine in your bloodstream, the possibility for heart disease, stroke, hypertension, all of those things exist. But if that methylation system is working, where we have this natural detox going on, and if it has become mutated, at least we support it, we can prevent those things from happening. We are in control here. As much as it feels like it's out of control, most of the time we are. And there's much more to learn, by the way, about methylation. You know, I'll suggest that anyone interested in it, look up I think his name is Dr. B.J. Hardick. He talks a lot about methylation. I love what he has to say. It makes total sense. He's really big on detox. He's really big on creating a healthy microbiome. All right? All right. So stay organic. We're going to fly through these slides now. Stay organic. We all know what the definition of superfoods are. And yes, I actually used to live on a farm like this, and I grew a lot of my own vegetables. Those were the foods I brought to the restaurant way back when, 37 years ago, to the vegan restaurant that I once owned. It's a beautiful thing to know that what grows on the land, when not toxified, of course, can truly give us everything we need. The earth is abundant, and so is the way our body operates. We just have to give it the right tools. Okay, having said that, I'm going to encourage everyone to be absolutely relentless in the manifestation of your own blessings. That was Elizabeth Gilbert who said that, but just be relentless. And what I mean by that is I never stop. I never take my eye off learning something new, anything I can pick up to have a further and a deeper understanding of how my body works. You know, I talk about quantum cleansing a lot, and quantum cleansing has to do with everything we've already talked about tonight. Really getting a sense of how your body works. Now you don't have to get too overly scientific with all of this. Just really simple, like we talked about. Your intestinal system is your second brain. Just know that your immune system is 80% operational when your gut is healthy. I mean, 80% of your immune system is operational through your gut. Little things like that. Just knowing a little bit of anatomy, like, hey, so there's a membrane, you know, and food moves through it, and there's some cells that need to stay healthy, and there are little hairs that move the food through the gut. Toss away what we don't need, prevent anything from being absorbed, these little things, just knowing these little things. And then being cognizant that there is in fact supplementation out there that can be very helpful. I actually like to call it complementation, because supplementation, there's a lot of very poor supplements. I'm not big on supplements at all. In fact, that's what I tell a lot of people that I work with. Most supplements are either contaminated with things that have no business being in them. They're fortified with things like folic acid, which is, you know, folic acid isn't the worst of the things that are in there, like artificial colors and things like magnesium stearate and silicon dioxide. But they are filled with things that are unhealthy. And so if I were to complement my body with things with complementary superfoods, now I'm getting the vitamins, the minerals, the micronutrients, the macronutrients, and I'm not artificially supplementing, which actually places a burden on the liver, in my opinion. Okay, so having said that, I always like to end this way. Well, there'll be one slide after this where I want to invite all of you to take advantage of a little something I want to share. But this says it all. When health is absent, wisdom cannot reveal itself. Our minds are foggy. So how can we become more aware? Okay, art cannot become manifest. How can we even be creative? Strength cannot be exerted. We have no strength in our bodies when our bodies become weak, like that plant I showed earlier. Wealth is useless when we're sick. And reason is powerless. Again, the mind. So, having said all of that, I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I do want to share this last little quote by Dr. Mark Hyman. Many of you know who he is. Food is not just calories, it's information. It talks to your DNA and it tells it what to do. Okay? The most powerful tool to change your health, environment, and entire world is your fork. All right. Now, I do want to share with all of you that there is a way to get that biomedic product that cleans up the herbicide. I wouldn't, you can start there if you feel the need to do it that way. I really like encouraging people to do a gentle cleanse, maybe a 10-day cleanse. There's something called a 10-day transformation on the iShop Purium site. By the way, for those of you who don't know, iShopPurium.com is really a go-to e-commerce site for superfoods, for extremely, well, let's put it this way, the highest standard in nutrition, non-GMO, organic, whole food, high density superfoods. No strings attached. You'll get a $50 gift card. I should have wrote that up there. You'll actually get a $50 gift card. You can get it from the person who brought you to this video, as it will be, or to this webinar tonight. You'll get a $50 gift card. Just put in the code Be Well and Thrive, or the code of the person that brought you to this webinar. iShop Purium it's just an awesome store. Bottom line, you know, I've been in nutrition for 37 years, and what I love about it is I can count on its purity and its quality, and I can count on the fact that there isn't anything added into it that doesn't belong in my body. You can determine that for yourself, by the way, on that site. There's no membership. There's no like monthlies on it. You just go in there, shop. If you spend $75, you get a $50 gift card. You're getting your whatever products you want to try for almost 80% off your first purchase. It's just a phenomenal site. The other site I put up was just a little site I had put up called Eating God's Way. You see it there, eatinggodsway.info. I put that site up only because I have a resource section there. So there's lots of books on, depending on what issues you may be facing now, or your family, or people, friends in your community. You can go there and find a cookbook on how to prevent heart disease. You can find ways to manage diabetes with food, with real whole food. You can find lots of excellent resources there. And I'll encourage you to do that. You can go over to Eating God's Way and just click on resources and find whatever book you want. Whether it's cancer, diabetes, heart disease, or you simply want to learn more about how to create a natural or vegan diet, you can get that information there. All right, everyone, we're 42 minutes into the hour. I want to thank all of you for coming. Thanks so much. And go on over to iShop Purium. I think you'll find something you love over there. Biomedic, you'll be able to find that. You can just type it into the search bar. The 10-day transformation, that's a gentle cleanse for restoring the gut, actually putting some food in there that will clean it out. For example, one of the foods is called Power Shake. It's a combination of grasses, wheatgrass, oatgrass, barley grass, etc., that will chelate out the metals from the liver, remove some of those xenotoxins we talked about in the webinar. It's a wonderful product. There's a wonderful protein for rebuilding and repairing muscle tissue. So any smooth muscle, the lining of your gut is smooth muscle. So that protein you can learn about there, it's called Super Amino 23. There's another product there that will actually clean up some of the free radicals with the bioflavonoids and the apothecary. And just go there and look up 10-day transformation. You'll be able to find it. Thanks, everybody, for coming. Have a great night. And remember one thing, and that is be relentless in your blessings in observing what you have here, which is a miracle called your body. Take care, everyone. Good night.
Dr. Mike Fleischer with New Path Nutrition. It's a pleasure to bring these simple tips to you. There's a lot more coming. If you simply click on the links in the description below this video and or on the annotations in the video, click on those links. You'll learn more about the kind of nutrition that actually helped me recover from a serious accident and will help you to actually elevate your level of health. Thanks for visiting today, everyone. See you on the next video.